A politically charged gunshot tears through the air of a boxing match during the 10th of September, striking a man named Charles Kirkland. The assassin's bullet rips into the left side of his neck, causing blood to spurt outward as his body collapses sideways, slumping to the left, his hands and arms raising upward. An assassination ultimately turned conspiracy when it was found out that an accomplice, a scapegoat by the name of Tyler the Executioner, was involved in the shooting. What I'm describing to you is one of the core plot points and the major enticing event of the 1998 movie Snake Eyes, featuring Nicolas Cage. With that being said, this raises a very important and natural question. What the fuck is with this movie and its eerie parallel to the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Firstly, I want to preface this video and make it crystal clear to anyone who is watching, I do not have a mind built for conspiracy. As in, I don't put much stock into human pattern recognition hardware and its uncritically examined analysis. Consequently, I believe that the human mind is hardwired to find meaning and patterns in any way it can, in areas where there exists none. Because it is my belief that evolution doesn't care about cold, precise, logical calculus. No, it prefers uniform, observational brute forcing, i.e., the path of least resistance. But on the contrary, and as I grow older, I have begun to internalize this idea that reality itself, the very thing I like to believe exists, is in part a evolutionary mental construct, that everything, the human experience wholly itself, gets experienced through this evolutionary structure, or structures, these ideas of time and space and causality and uniformity. And therefore, I am beginning to believe that the human mind and all of its supposed faults are inextricably interlinked and one and the same with our representation of reality in the universe. This is to say that I do not necessarily fault people for believing in the supernatural or the parapolitical, and perhaps, after all, this aforementioned evolutionary defect might not be an error, and perhaps it touches upon truth and reality in ways that we can't immediately rationalize or comprehend or deduce. And it's coincidences like these that really make me scratch my head. And I already know the counter argument, which is, given enough time, anything is possible. Even some philosophers believe that if time and the universe are infinite, then you will experience your life again and again and again and again and again, because the molecular configurations of your brain and your body will inevitably be replicated given enough time. This is just to say that coincidences are bound to happen, no matter how shocking, how precise, how outlandish they appear. In fact, it would be more shocking and revelatory if coincidences never happened, especially when perceived and expressed through the human experiential framework. In other words, coincidences are more likely to happen under the same conditions with the same species, humans on planet Earth, isolated in a tiny ball, than when comparing ourselves to a species across the universe on an entirely different planet. More coincidences are bound to happen within a game of Civ 5 compared to itself than when compared to a game of Stellaris, for example. This might bring some context to how human creations tend to see themselves replicated in human reality, like with the famous example of the book with the sinking of the Titan, or when Edgar Allan Poe predicted that cannibalism event, or that time when a episode of a 1950s TV show featured a character named Trump who proposed a plan to save the world by building a wall. And just as a thought experiment, think of all the undocumented coincidences created by people with unwritten thoughts. Another example would be deja vu, which is a phenomenon experienced by literally everyone. Conversely, there have been many moments of time that have passed without any coincidences. Do those moments hold as much weight as the incidental moments? Why would they not? Anyways, I implore you to mull that question in your mind for a while. Likewise, and most pertinently, the movie Snake Eyes, which, if you've forgotten, is the topic of this video. My sincerest apologies for that. Yeah. So, in the beginning of this video, we briefly touched upon the core, most damning coincidences. Ones that I believe are the most instrumental to any conspiracy regarding predictive programming or anything of the supernatural. However, there are more coincidences that we'll touch upon, but briefly, I want to talk about the disagreements, some of the controversy surrounding the core ones first. Mainly regarding the date of the boxing event in question where Charlie Kirkland was assassinated in the movie. This point of contention arises from a scene featuring the billboard where the event takes place, where it shows a date of when the event is happening. And unfortunately, there only exists a couple of scenes within the movie showing this billboard, and it's all in motion, causing people to vehemently disagree on what the text says, whether or not it takes place on September 10th, the actual date of Charlie Kirk's assassination in reality, or the 16th or the 19th. People have extrapolated numbers from this blurry text. But one thing is for certain, and it's this: it takes place during the month Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and it takes place numerically close to the 10th regardless, ultimately sharing the same leading digit and the same tens place. And furthermore, people have somehow forgotten that the boxing match itself is a sort of parallel and synchronicity to Charlie Kirk's debate tour, because a debate is essentially a boxing match where you jab, 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 duck, block, jab, 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 duck, block. Debating is essentially a form of intellectual boxing. Furthermore, I want to make this point, and it is this: stuff that is slightly off, like the September 10th and September 19th, or Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirkland, I think that is also equally as disturbing, eerie, and concerning, just like if it were to be completely and utterly accurate. It feels like that's another form of premeditation in a way, a form of deliberate design. Like, just don't handwave shit because it's slightly off out of principle. Moreover, there are some other weird parallels to this movie and to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. For instance, there was this website, this feminist website by the name of Jezebel, which paid witches on Etsy to curse Charlie Kirk 2 days before he was assassinated. And Snake Eyes takes place during a tropical storm, a hurricane, by the name of Jezebel. Strange, isn't it? Now, a feminist website called Jezebel and a hurricane called Jezebel on their own isn't particularly shocking. Actually, it's to be expected if you're familiar with any theology or anything to do with the Bible. But still, a very weird coincidence when you take into account that the article itself, people who run the website literally paid some witches to curse Charlie with something terrible. So, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than just the words. Moreover, there are some more similarities with regard to the conspiratorial elements. You know, it being an insider job, it having broader motives, in particular with the speculation surrounding whether or not it was a Palestinian, a anti-Zionist perpetrator, which in the movie, the assassin is literally a Palestinian killing the American Secretary of Defense because of Israel. Additionally, there is this surface level Trump connection. Charlie Kirk, famously a friend of Donald Trump's. Key scenes in that movie were filmed at the Taj Mahal, which is one of Trump's casinos, where the character, the casino owner, it was based on Trump himself. What's more is that on the cover of the movie poster, there is a tagline to the movie, you know, the motto, "Believe everything except your eyes," which is incredibly pertinent to the rampant conspiracy and the rampant speculation of who actually killed Charlie Kirk. Was it an inside job? Were there patsies? Why were there 2 diversions right after he was killed? What the fuck is going on? Why did Tyler Robinson supposedly disassemble a notoriously complex rifle and then reassembled it for some reason? There are just so many weird things that happened during this event. And the tagline, the motto being "Believe everything except your eyes," that is crazy within itself, to be honest with you. Just the sheer compounding of all these prescient coincidences on each other, it just confounds me, really. Like, don't even include the probability of our universe existing and us either on top of that, because holy fuck. In conclusion, I have absolutely no idea why the fuck shit like this happens and occurs. I like it that way. I think that's what makes being a human so fun, is that we don't know everything, and that we don't have an all-encompassing understanding of reality, so that makes reality more interesting. When you don't see the inner workings of the hood, it makes everything more mystical and more ethereal. Perhaps the pursuit of knowledge is more fun than actually gaining the knowledge. Perhaps there are no whys in the universe, and it's just an entirely human concept that has no bearing on reality. Who knows? And I don't know, man. Listen, I don't know. Every day that passes, I'm beginning to really believe that the entire universe is a simulation, and that's despite me understanding that the simulation theory is intellectually and philosophically lazy. It doesn't really answer any fundamental questions about our existence or the universe, who created the universe, what does it mean to exist. All those questions get shifted to another universe that created ours, and they have to deal with those questions, and we are just left, saying, "Oh, you created us," but what created them? It doesn't fundamentally answer any questions, and therefore, it is my opinion that simulation theory is just a lazy cop-out that doesn't answer anything. But goddamn, does it feel like the universe is a fucking simulation? And shit like this doesn't help at all, especially when coupled with how pre-scripted and scripted our lives are in the modern world. Anyways, I'm interested in what you guys have to say in the comments. What do you guys think? Is there more to the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Does this movie show us a glimpse into the potential conspiratorial elements of there being a patsy and an accomplice? Anyways, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Yeah, see ya.